Beautiful. Let me just get my screen sharing working with everybody. I apologize that this presentation will be in English. I'm afraid my Russian is very basic and most definitely not up to this level. Can you start to see my slides there? I will just turn to full presentation mode.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If my machine will speed up. There we go. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you. And I'm going to spend the next 18 minutes just talking about the international future of sustainability. How are multinational corporations around the world using and addressing issues of sustainability? How does Future Fit as an organization play a role within this? And then importantly, how can you, as Generation Z, what role do you play in the future of sustainability? Because this is a critical issue for you. You are the ones who are ultimately going to be facing the outcome of many of the issues that we're facing. If we are successful in tackling issues of climate change and social inequality, etc., you will benefit from that. If we do not, you are going to be, unfortunately, at the forefront of suffering from those things. So these issues are absolutely critical. I'm not going to talk about those issues specifically. I'm going to assume that you're all familiar with them. So I'm not going to lecture you on the problems that we're facing, but talk about some of the solutions. So as Future Fit Foundation, we're a UK-based non-profit, and we're working with some of the biggest companies around the world by providing free system science-based tools to help them truly embed how they address sustainability into their day-to-day issues. Some of the names here I'm sure you'll recognize: Chanel, The Body Shop, De Beers, the diamond organization, some huge investors like Federated Hermes. But firstly, let's think, how does business and how should business respond to issues of sustainability? And I would suggest there are three ways that business can respond. The first is to be very defensive. And that's what actually comes out of an old shareholder value perspective. It says, well, we're already contributing to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. We're already contributing to society because we create jobs, we're doing something to reduce our emissions. But really it comes down to being all about the shareholder value. And environment and society are separate issues that are externalities. They're not priced in, they can be ignored. And the problem with this approach, of course, is that ultimately the store of ability for the environment and society to build up these externalities vanishes. They run out of reserves, they go bankrupt. That's what we're seeing in climate change. The planet starts to fight back because the system cannot continue to operate. And if we keep working in business in this light, defensively, saying, well, it's not really my problem, of course, we're never going to get anywhere closer to a solution. So a more progressive approach is to be selective in our response. And this captures what you might have been taught about shared value. And this is where we begin to bring these three circles together. And we justify some of the positives that we're creating against the negative externalities. And we somehow try to balance those things. And we say, well, we're doing good over here. We're producing products that are useful to people. But we maybe ignore the deforestation or the carbon emissions that happen over here. Well, how do we trade off those two things? We can't. How do we justify the fact that we pay tobacco farmers a living wage, but we produce a product that kills millions of people every year? How do you balance those two things? It doesn't really make sense. So we believe we have to look at these problems holistically. We need to draw these three circles together. We need to recognize that for business to flourish, society has to be flourishing. And for society to flourish, the planet has to flourish. Only when we bring these three things into harmony, and we say business is actively seeking to drive progress in this direction, not breaching the boundaries of planet and society, but being financially successful because They are rebuilding those boundaries. They are operating within those conditions. They are part of the solution. Only if we get every business around the world focusing on this type of an approach can we meaningfully be moving towards a truly sustainable future. So the first question for you has to be, what role are you playing in creating this type of an approach? How are you helping the organizations that you work for or will go to work for or are buying from or participating in? How are you encouraging them to move in this direction? And how should they be addressing these issues? How are they addressing the issues? This is a little schematic of Porter's 5 forces. Any of you who've done an MBA will be very, very familiar with this, or some sort of business degree, because this is talking about the major forces that operate on any business: your suppliers, your buyers, rivalry or substitute products within industry. And that's all great, but when we look at it in this concept of these nested dependencies, we realize that in today's society, there are 3 new big factors that are playing a part: the environmental context of climate change, societal context of expectations from your customers, the ability for a single tweet or piece of social media to destroy a company's reputation overnight, and the technological context of constantly increasing technology and capability. How do these things play into what you do as an organization? How do you address these issues alongside those traditional forces? How do we enrich what we call our systems intelligence, understanding all of these forces to build a responsible, a regenerative and resilient type of business, the one that we need that will take us to a flourishing future? Let me give you a very, very quick, simple example. Novo Nordisk is one of the world's biggest manufacturers of insulin. They're a global but Danish-based pharmaceutical company. Now, who would you think is one of their biggest rivals in the future? An old style thinking would make you say, well, maybe GSK or AstraZeneca or Roche, one of the other big pharmaceutical companies, coming along with a slightly better, slightly cheaper, slightly easier to use form of insulin. But actually, one of their biggest rivals in the future is Apple, because Apple have developed a technology that enables your Apple iPhone to sit on your wrist and monitor your blood sugar level. So something that you're wearing will be able to give you a tap on the hand to tell you that you need to take a walk and get some exercise, or you need to have some sugar because your blood sugar level is falling down. In other words, technology will take the place of the need for an insulin tablet. Now, that's not to say that Novo Nordisk doesn't have a role in the future, quite the opposite. But if you're not aware of these different types of changes and challenges coming down the line, then you're not prepared as a business to be able to address those up front and therefore be ready when those things come along. So we believe actually business leaders need to be asking 3 questions. Not what do we sell, but what societal need are we addressing? How do we do it? How are we uniquely positioned to answer that need? And how can we leverage what makes us unique to identify and change our business? This isn't about incremental change. This is about radical redesign of business to be perfect for a future fit society, a truly sustainable society, where we protect the possibilities that humans and other life can flourish on Earth forever by being environmentally restorative, socially just, and economically inclusive. This is our vision as Future Fit Foundation. And taking that type of business thinking that I just outlined drives us towards this type of future. The tools that we've created are deliberately built to be practical and enable businesses to start that transformation. This all sounds lovely, but when you talk to a chief executive about these things, they say, that's great, but I've got a day-to-day business to run. How do I change. And that's why we've created a thing called the Future Fit Business Benchmark. And I don't have time to talk about that in detail today, but just give you a very high level overview. We think of the impact of a business through this 2x2 lens of negative and positive impact, your direct and your indirect impacts. To exist in a future fit society, every business must eliminate, firstly, its own negative impacts. It must avoid everything that undermines our social well-being or degrades the environment. And we've created from that this set of 23, as it happens, what we call break-even goals. Things that guide a company towards that boundary condition. If a company can ultimately say yes to all 23 of those, and almost no company can say it today, and we've defined in great detail what these mean, but if a company can start working on all of these issues, it can get to that, what we call the extra financial break-even point. In other words, it can stop damaging planet and society through these actions. Some of these goals will be super easy for a company to do. Some will be incredibly hard. If you're a fossil fuel energy company or an extractive company, some of these goals will be really tricky. So what does it look like to revolutionize your company and completely change in the future to still be providing your purpose of energy or whatever it might be, but in a way that is not polluting, creating waste, or whatever it might be? Now, the good news is it's not all about the bad. There are actually 3 squares here that talk about the good. What can you also do to help reduce the negative impacts of others, to go beyond break even and create positive impact yourself, to amplify the positive impacts of others? And we have a corresponding set here of what we call our positive pursuits. These are all of the things that an organization could do to rebuild planet and society. Now, with the break-even goals, you have to do all of them eventually to not be damaging planet and society. These are not about doing all of them. These are about identifying the 1, the 2, or the 3 things that enable you as a business to live out your purpose. Is it related to energy? Is it related to pollution? Is it related to people? Whatever it might be, how do you ultimately transform your business to be living out 1 or 2 of these purposes whilst eliminating your negative impacts? That is the journey that Future Fit is trying to put every organization that uses our free framework to be able to do. Now, I appreciate in 3 minutes, that's very, very quick. So I would encourage you to go and look at our website, futurefitbusiness.org, where you can read all about this. You can download all of our documents. Again, I'm afraid at the moment they're only available in English. Hopefully at some point we will be able to provide them in Russian as well. If any of you are good at translation, drop me an email. But our website there will enable you to dig more into all of this. It shows how we link to the Sustainable Development Goals in more detail. And what you might find particularly interesting is our crash course video series. 20 short videos that take you through in way more detail everything that I've just talked about here in terms of systemic change, how we change things, how Future Fit can help, and how organizations are using that. So really encourage you to go to our website and take a look at that. So as we come into land, the big question then is what can you do? Well, let's go back to those 3 words of resilient, regenerative, and responsible. So as an individual, what does it mean to be responsible? It means to reduce and in time eliminate your negative personal footprint. What can you do to eliminate the waste associated with your life? To eliminate your carbon emissions? What does it mean to buy less and to buy better? Think about what you buy. Do you really need to buy it? And if you do, can you buy something that will last a long time or that you can repair in the future rather than just taking something and throwing it away? How do you influence your friends, your family, your colleagues to start thinking in this way? How can you influence the place where you are working? If you're working for an organization that's causing a lot of negative impact, how can you start to change and drive influence within that place? Influence the senior leadership to start changing direction. Help them to recognize that it's not just because you're a nice person or a tree hugger, but for the future of society, for the future of you, and for the long-term sustainability and flourishing of that organization. From a pure business perspective, it makes sense to start transforming. So encourage them to do that. Show them our tools, show them other tools. Start persuading them that this is a pathway that they will need to go down. And that's not an easy thing to do. There will be a lot of people, particularly older, usually male people, who don't agree with this approach or don't see the value in it. So it's a lot of struggle and a lot of persuasion needed. But you are a catalyst to causing that change. And then in the same way that we talked about reducing your negative, how can you increase your positive impacts? What can you do in the way you live to be able to support organizations that are taking us on this journey to what we call a future fit society? How can you, again, think about the things that you're buying, supporting organizations that are trying to do the right thing? How do you encourage your organization where you work to go beyond that reduction of negative into that increasing the positive impact that they have? Are there NGOs and others that you can go and support and provide a bit of time for to help move your country, your region, your city in a better direction? How can you help us drive towards that regenerative future? But the critical thing is to think, how can you be a part of the solution in everything that you do? This is not an add-on. This is not something you put at the end of your day. This has to become a core in how you live. Everything that you do, everybody you talk to, everything that you try and do. It has to be becoming that mindset. And it's not stop living, it's not do anything, it's not have fun, but start to think about how every decision you can make could start to take us in this positive direction. And if all of you start to do that, and all of the Gen Zs around the world start to do that, then we'll be getting somewhere towards a future fit society. And I think that lands me with about 10 seconds within 18 minutes. So I'm going to pause there. My contact details and our website are on the screen in front of you. I don't know whether we have 10 seconds for any questions or whether we're just going to draw a line there, but thank you so much for your attention.
Martin, thank you so much. It was great. Yes, we have one question for you.
Please.
What made you choose the sustainable way of life? What triggered it, or were you always leading a sustainable lifestyle?
No, I've always had a passion for the planet generally, and I've always been passionate about people living a full life to the fullest. That's just always been part of me. But my career, I started in investment banking, which really wasn't very impactful or sustainable. And it was through a journey of learning about how the financial system in the world worked. Then I took that knowledge into the social investment space and started to take financing skills to social enterprises and charities. And I guess really I just one day woke up to realizing the impact that business has on planet and society. And that if we keep going in this direction, there is not a good ending to it. There is no good ending. If we get up to 2.5, 3 degrees and beyond of warming, for example, things will go very bad. And then realizing that I had some of the skills and ability to help drive positive change. And when you realize that society is, in a big bus heading towards a cliff, you can't anymore just sit at the back of the bus and enjoy the journey. You've got to stand up and start shouting. You've got to run to the front and try and turn the steering wheel or press the brake. So I think it was that realization and that desire to help drive change. My life is not by any means perfectly sustainable. It's very hard to live a truly sustainable life in the modern world. but I try to make decisions in the things I buy, how I buy them, where I invest. I have 100% renewable energy at home, for example. I don't buy very much. What I buy, I try and make sure is recyclable and sustainably sourced, etc. So it's about taking those steps, realizing that, you know, for me, I could play part of the solution. And if I'm part of the solution and I encourage others to be part of the solution, then we'll get there.
Okay, we have one more question for you.
Sure.
Do you think the world will change for better when technological companies have to compete with medical companies? Alina means, will it give a push to medical innovations, or on contrary, make profit the main goal?
Well, that's the big challenge, isn't it? You know, can we persuade enough people to realize that profit alone can't be an end goal? We are now facing existential risks. If we carry on a trajectory that says, you know, profit is all that matters, somewhere between 2050 and 2100, human society will cease to exist as we know it today. That's not a debatable point. That's fact. There are a lot of people who either want to deny that fact or say, I'll be dead by 2050, I don't care. And that's fine for them, but that's not very good for the rest of us. So we have to ask the question, do we want to let them live that way? Do we want to let people carrying on in a way that basically condemns global society to death at some point in the near future? I don't think that's acceptable. I'm not prepared to accept that. Technology alone will not save us. A change of mindset needs to save us, but technology can bring amazing changes. And I mean, obviously, in the current COVID-19 pandemic, a combination of technology and amazing healthcare revolution, you know, has driven now, we've got these, 2 American, 1 European, 1 Russian, and I think 1 Chinese vaccine already at various stages of rollout. Incredible, absolutely amazing. Can those types of revolution drive us to a truly future fit society? Just imagine if we put as much effort into tackling climate change in the next 10 years as we've put into tackling COVID over the last 1 year. We know what the solutions look like. We know how to get to a truly sustainable future. I've just shown you how we get there. System science has known this for years. Yes, we need technological revolution to help with some of those things. But if we put all the global, governmental, and societal effort into tackling these issues, and we stopped trying to focus just on money, and we stopped trying to focus on getting political one-upmanship and fighting with each other around the world, we could absolutely get there within 10 years. Do I believe that we will? Unfortunately, I see a lot of political fighting. I see a lot of political positioning between countries, which is ridiculous and is taking us all in completely the wrong direction. But that has been politics for the history of humanity. So I honestly don't know. I think we can get there. We know what we need to get there. Will we get there? Ultimately comes down to us as individuals acting in a way that takes us there. And part of that is telling our politicians and our leaders where we want things to go. It's acting that way through the way we work, through the way we spend our money, the way we invest, and sending the message that this is where we want society to go. If we do that, maybe we can get there.